Hello, Namaste, and welcome to Agile Exploration Hub. I'm your host, Nagesh Deshpande. In today's episode, we are going to talk about backlog, bottlenecks, and big breakthrough, moving from clutter to clarity. To set the context here, what I'd like to say here is as an Agile project team or as a Scrum Master or Agile coach, we day in, day out work with backlogs, be it product backlog, be it sprint backlog. But we often see that it is always cluttered, it's not properly organized, well planned. There are a lot of things that is missing and all. So we thought of having a discussion on this, and to talk on this topic, we have Jaspal today. Jaspal is a senior agile coach. He's a highly experienced individual in agile industry. He is a mindfulness coach as well. He has been a speaker on Agile Exploration Hub previously. So I will welcome Jaspal to our today's episode. Hi, Jaspal.
Hello, everyone, and thank you, Nagesh. It's a pleasure to be here again. And this is such a relevant topic because I've always believed behind every backlog item there's a conversation waiting to happen, and often whether a team gets stuck or moves forward, it isn't really about the task. It's about how that task is understood, framed, and shared, and that's where stories matter, so to say, user stories matter, right?
User stories matter. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll continue this discussion. Before we moving ahead, I'll request all of you to subscribe to my channel. Watch this episode till the end because there are a lot of discussion, a lot of good topics that we are going to discuss today. Also, add a comment what other topics that you would like to hear from Agile Exploration Hub. So without wasting much time, let's jump on to today's discussion directly. So let's begin. Okay, so Jaspal, no, we we are like we are used to it now. We know everything day in day out, like agile, maybe daily scrum, burn downs and sprints, and now
Mm.
if you talk about safe, then PI and innovation sprint and all that. But everywhere we talk something about stories, user stories, epics, or
Mm.
uh, like that. So why these stories matter here?
Yeah, I mean that's an interesting point to begin, plain and simple, because even in highly technical environments, software that we deliver, technology that we
Mm.
work with, work is fundamentally human, right? It's by the
Right.
human at the end of the day for the humans. And if we look at, say, for example, a backlog, so every user story in it, or an enhancement in it, or a bug, whatever is listed on your backlog, it holds a deeper story, right? Of a customer's pain, of an unmet need, or of a business opportunity, right? And to bring this context alive, help teams engage, we need purpose. And when we say purpose, there comes a question of what's the narrative, what's the story behind everything. So, uh, putting it straight, it's the difference between, oh, fix the API bug, and something like, restore trust in our checkout experience. So if you look at fix the API bug, it's typically sounding like a task. It is a task. But when we look at
Right.
restore trust in our checkout experience for the customers, that's sounding more like a mission, right? So that's the core difference. So the moment you narrate these two things, uh, the intent changes, right? So,
Right.
for example, I'll give you a quick anecdote here, just sharing a example
Mm,
story that I read from the book. This is Lean. So, in the book, the authors very beautifully put across a story around airport security process. So, from an operational lens, uh, it was efficient. The process fitted very well with the security framework of the airports
mm,
and guidelines, of course. But from a traveler's perspective, if we look at it, does it really fit? I doubt.
mm,
Because travelers had to face long queues, confusion, frustration, perhaps missed flights, and so forth. So if you look at it, the flow was broken uh, because the story wasn't seen end to end.
mm.
You know what I'm saying, right?
Right, right, right.
Agile delivery often suffers the same way.
Right. Yeah. So moving ahead, it's a very nicely you explain everything here. You know why story matters here. So
Yeah.
moving ahead now, uh, we day in day out we deal with the stories and user stories and epics and all that.
Hmm.
And as we practice, all those stories initially will land in product backlog. You know,
Hmm.
but there are always issues with this, like you mentioned just now. There is an issue. So maybe a airport or authority has their own story. However,
Hmm.
travelers' stories are not being considered.
Hmm.
So now this is one kind of a mistake. So I would like to understand, what common mistakes that leads to this kind of a cluttered backlog, product backlog specifically.
Uh, I would say primarily people miss the why, right? So
Why? Right.
a cluttered backlog often signals a broken or unclear narrative. Sorry, I'm using the word narrative a lot because everything
Mm,
ultimately it's about stories being solved, narratives being told
mm,
from product owners to developers and so forth, right? And if we look at it, it's just a set of wish list items, business opportunities, which gets translated into user stories, epics, whatever you call. And the team ultimately works on delivering those in the form of solutions, right?
right.
So, coming back to the question, so typically unclear narratives, unclear stories being told, so which lead to no ownership, low visibility into value, items being parked just in case, for just in case rather.
Mm,
Bottlenecks, typically, if you look at it, as I told you about the airport story, those are not really about bandwidth, so to say. Many of those are caused by misaligned or unheard stories. And if we mistake motion for progress, uh, that's again some angle to look at it, right? Because
right.
progress is usually um, not something like only one team is moving fast. The whole set of teams, say, for example, you called about PI planning or PI being delivered in a safe environment. So if not all the teams are moving in motion, there's no progress there,
Mhm.
right? So if you look at it, again, I'll quote a story. Sorry, I'm quoting a couple of stories here from this book, which I loved reading recently. This is Lean. A story
This-
shared by the authors about
Okay.
a patient visiting multiple departments and counters just to get one simple diagnosis done, right? And the overall flow was so painful. Forget about the fact that the patient's cancer diagnosis was delayed by not days, but multiple weeks together. And that's what happens, Nagesh, right? In delivery too. Local
Absolutely.
efficiency, but global friction, so to say, right?
Mm.
And to answer your question, I mean, uh, bloated and cluttered backlogs
Clutter,
are
clutter black.
basically because, uh, you just dump things into your backlog merely as if it's a sounding board rather than a decision space, right? And sometimes people just confuse ideas with priorities, right? So without regular pruning or refinement, without refocusing, your backlog becomes nothing but a parking lot of many stories, right? And that's where
Right, right, right.
it becomes bloated and cluttered, right?
Absolutely. Good, good, good way. The way you explained it very, very nicely. And now, you did mention about the refinements and all that. So we know that once the product backlog being defined or been written or created, we do the refinements and then we brought it into the sprint called as a sprint backlog. Then how do you identify or prioritize real bottlenecks in the sprint? So like there may be some stories or some feature that is lying in the product backlog, and then you have to bring it down to sprint backlog. So how do you identify or prioritize such real bottlenecks?
Yeah, again, I think that's a very practical situation we say day in, day out, right? It's not just a theoretical question that you have thrown across at me, right? So I would say patterns do help, like repeated blockers, missed dependencies, context switching, and so forth, right? But then I always ask, where is the friction for the end user or for this story from being committed to as done, right? Not just for the team. And often the real bottleneck, as I mentioned, it isn't about tech or tasks. It's decision latency, unclear ownership, or fear of rework.
Mm.
To cite an example, in one of the teams which I worked with in the past, so we had an infrastructure request, wherein data was to be sent from our databases, our systems externally onto cloud, right? And this called in
Okay.
for
Yeah.
firewall requests being put in, whitelisting IPs, and so forth. So basically, firewall requests combined with server configuration support requests and all that. Needless to mention, this sat idle for weeks. So even if development was done, we were ready, we had to wait. And
Mm.
everybody blamed ops team or the IT team. But but if we, you know, looked at it closely, which I did in one of the stand-ups, the request lacked urgency. So there was no
Mm.
literally there was no story behind it, right? So we then reframed that story as, of course, I had to, escalate it a bit to and forth. But then we made it a process going forward that whenever we have such requests, we reframe it as so and so with so and so urgency. So in this case,
Right.
the story was, oh, we need this request to be served urgently because this enables us to submit reports externally, which saves 4 hours, 4 to 6 hours a week, for the reporting team. And,
Yeah.
you know, it worked wonders with the story and the priority being tagged in. Suddenly it was picked up, jumped in priority, and we got it resolved. Yeah, that's a real example that I thought I would like to call out here. Yeah.
Right. To summarize, what I will say that if the stories are there, which is not been picked up, revisit them, refine them, again discuss what is the priority, how urgent it is, what are the dependencies, which teams are getting involved. Everything has to be there, and then you align them to your sprint goal, and it will be picked
Absolutely.
it up. So
Absolutely.
that's a very nice way to handle the bottlenecks right now.
Yeah.
Moving
Yeah.
ahead, yeah. So moving ahead, now that we have this product backlog, sprint backlog, now we are coming to planning. Okay. We did one bit of discussion on refinement, but now planning.
Mm-hmm.
So there are mostly people do reactive planning. So they see, okay, oh, this story is missed. Okay, let's write that story and now develop it. So that's how. But now, how and mm, or what technique? First of all, how, and second thing, what technique will help teams to move from reactive planning to proactive planning?
Mm. Again, a good question uh, around something which is what you say, a situation that happens day in, day out, I would.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, we react most of the times, and uh, that's not good in a way. And in fact, it could turn out to be one of the biggest bottlenecks, right? So when we say reactive versus proactive planning, I would still insist we need to start with a clear narrative, right? Invite
Right.
the team into the bigger picture, tell them about the product goal, the sprint goal, give them the roadmap context. Even if it is repeatable for a couple of sprints, fine. Share user insights. And again, something that we discussed in the previous minute or so, use backlog refinement, not just to
Hmm.
size
Hmm.
your work, but to sense alignment. So
Hmm.
when you say sense alignment, it's more or less your product owner or whoever is responsible in your team for prioritizing the stories, for that person to look at the alignment and pick the most important things first, right? So
Right.
the point that I'm making is, instead of looking at, oh, let's do this now, whatever you're doing now, fine, but you have to also look ahead, like
Hmm.
maybe two sprints down the line, whatever it may be. And obviously, you need to build reflection time. So when I say reflection, it's nothing but your retrospectives, feedback loops, which you can even inject in your daily stand-ups, so to say. And obviously, your team must feel that they're building something meaningful, right? And
Right.
they always look to plan forward, not just to react. So, all in all, what I'm trying to say here is build in that habit of reflecting often, looking
Hmm.
forward, and looking at putting things first in terms of, oh, these are the things, these are the stories which we need to deliver next, right? So this will let your team move from reactive to a proactive approach, so to say.
Nice. Right. So now, like we are going through a flow.
Hmm.
Now that we did the planning, now we are into the sprint where the real action, okay,
Hmm.
or sometimes real mess happens.
Hmm.
So now, how how do you make sure that, mm, or let me rephrase,
Hmm.
so let's say we are here to help a scrum master,
Hmm.
okay, who has to deal with something which is overcommitted or overloaded team. So he's working with a team. They are overcommitted,
Hmm.
being they didn't understood the bigger picture, and then they do the reactive planning, and then they end up having lot of stories in their sprint. So how should a Scrum Master or help this team or deal with this kind of situation? So before I'll add something here to my audience. So this Agile Exploration Hub is here to help young Scrum Masters or young Agile coaches. So I will request to listen to this question and answer very nicely and then add your inputs as well. So let me re-ask or rephrase this question. How a Scrum Master should deal with a overcommitted or overloaded team where they have overcommitted something.
Yeah, these these situations again, they happen sometimes with some teams for sure, especially when either the stories are not clear or the team is fresh and new, or they just commit for the sake of committing, and then later on they deprioritize things and so forth and remove things from their sprint backlog, so to say. Now, coming to your question, the first and foremost thing that comes to my mind is, as a Scrum Master or as an Agile coach, it's your responsibility to have honest conversations with your team,
Right,
right? So overcommitment often it stems from fear, either of underperforming or saying no, or for any other reason where the team just goes ahead and picks the item, right? So Scrum Masters must make invisible work visible, question their capacity, question their patterns, and bring forth the idea of normalizing sustainable pace, right?
mm,
It's, see, when you are delivering something, it's not about velocity, right? It's about what value are you delivering with quality, right?
right,
So I would suggest all the young Scrum Masters and Agile coaches to deal with this situation in a very human way, and simply by having honest conversations, right?
right, right. So from my side, I'll summarize and I'll add my points, my points also here. So Scrum Masters don't chase for velocity, please.
Yeah.
Look at what value your team is adding. Okay, if your
Yes.
team knows the value, they will not overcome it. If they're chasing the velocity, they will overcome it. They will be always burnout.
Yes.
So when you are planning, even if it is, if this is a classic interview question, even if there is a change in the middle of the sprint, you should make sure that the change that is brought later into the sprint adding a value, not you know trying to cover up something which is we have missed.
Hmm.
So very good point, Jaspal. I really like this way. Uh, let's move on to the next point. So now here we are we are here looking at so far as a team level or till a Scrum
Hmm.
Master get involved or even Agile
Hmm.
coach. Now, I would like to understand the role of leadership. Yeah.
Hmm.
What is the role of leadership in backlog refinement and prioritization?
Hmm. When you say leadership, I assume it's more about the product owner, it's more about any stakeholders who might have inputs to getting something uh, delivered via the team,
Right,
correct?
right,
Okay. So if we talk about pure Scrum terminology, leadership is always external to the team, right? They
right,
are available, they empower the team in a way, they are responsible for supplying anything the team needs to enable them move forward, right?
Mm, mm.
Now, specifically talking about leadership here in this case, uh, I would say they must help in moving forward. They help in clarifying things, not trying to control. So, for examples, leaders can highlight urgency, risk, or opportunity, but they must not um, just instruct, right? They must do everything through intent
Absolutely.
because intent matters. The why or the purpose matters, right? So when they say, for example, we want to reduce onboarding drop offs instead of, hey, build a new widget, build a new screen, they are giving the teams the why, right? Why are we building this widget?
Mm,
Or why are we building this functionality or a screen, right? So all that I'm trying to say here is leadership uh, must bring in the why and let the team shape the how and the what's, right? Hows and what's.
absolutely.
Let the team take
Mm.
care of it, right? So I think this is what comes to my mind, giving your team a good, safe place to experiment, to move on. So that psychological safety and trust matters.
Right. We always talk about psychological safety. So leaders practice psychological safety. That's what we can see here right now.
Yeah.
Moving on. Okay. And then now that we discussed everything, I would like to hear something, a story. Not the user story, but the real life story. You already shared one of them, but can you share somewhere a team was stuck into issues and the problems or this clutter? We use this word clutter or bottleneck, and
Hmm.
then you help them, or not maybe you or some other agile coach, Scrum Master help them to
Hmm.
break through and move into clarity.
I mean, there have been many stories, many stories, I would say, where we had to intervene, help people move forward, and so forth. So, an example story to cite would be so we were building a reporting solution, and this was around risk and compliance. And it was so complicated because it had to involve so many scenarios, which even quite a few stakeholders from the business team, they weren't aware of, you know, certain scenarios to be involved and what data points to be included, etc. So the team got the stories, they developed something, and during UAT we figured out that so and so data points which were actually required by the regulators are missing, right?
Mm, mm,
So this boiled down to having impromptu discussions with the wider team, calling in for uh, code changes, etc., last minute, which again boiled down to uh, you know delaying the overall release. So in this case, as the Scrum Master for this team, what I had to do was I had to initiate a dialogue with the product owner, which I
mm,
did. We had a very healthy chat, so I took my proposal in front of her, showed her the scenarios, showed her the complexity and the number of scenarios due to which that complexity arose. And we
mm,
had a very healthy, I think that meeting went on for 90 minutes. We originally thought of booking 30 minutes, but it went on. At the end of the 90 minutes, we both had a very healthy chat around. what should be the way forward. And then what we did was we picked the most important scenarios, which we say see day out, and the most involved financial instruments involved in those scenarios. And that's how, you know, during that given sprint,
Mm.
picked only those few scenarios which were critical. And what other thing that we did was, alongside, we got regression tests also designed with the help of a test automation specialist we had on the team, so that, while we deliver this piece, the new functionality is tested, no doubt, but there are other tests also being built which regression test the rest of the piece and which uncover
Mm.
certain scenarios which some of the SMEs also did not know, right? So
Mm.
the result was, for I think 2 odd sprints, we did not have much value being delivered. So we focused more
Mm.
on the clarity, more on the how to do this, right? Why
Right.
was clear? Why was very clear, we need to meet the regulatory compliance, right? But
Mm.
how and what? That's what we defined very clearly in those 2 sprints. And the result after the 2 sprints was so great that the next following, I think, 4 5 sprints, we literally completed majority of the delivery, right? And yeah, I mean, that's a classic example of how things were blocked, things got bloated a bit, and once we had clear conversations, when uh, once we had a very deep dived, what you say, conversation, it clarified certain things and helped the team move forward. So that's one
Nice.
example, Nagesh, I could narrate.
Great, great example that you have shared, Jaspal. So, Jaspal, it was pleasure talking to you once again. It was very nice discussion. There are so many takeaways from this episode as well. So, from my audience and from Agile Exploration Hub, I would like to say thank you for being such a wonderful speaker, and see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Nagesh, for having me. Bye bye.
Bye bye.